Bases dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here. It's March 23rd. It is still soccer under quarantine as we kind of wait to see what could happen, not just in the United States. I mean, it's worldwide. The A-League, I believe all Australian competitions have now shut down. I don't think there's anybody playing left, is there, John?
Nicaragua?
Russia.
I'm trying to remember. I think Nicaragua had some matches last night. There's exhibition baseball going on.
Because not in the United States. Make that clear.
No. Far East.
Well, but that's a different... And I think this is important because at times everything's getting lumped together like it's on the same timeline, and it's not. Last I've seen, and I haven't seen any changes to this as of yet, the Japanese Baseball League and, I think it's the Japanese Baseball League and the Soccer League in China are trying to get back underway in a month. Still a month away.
Basketball. Yeah.
Basketball, too. And basketball in China. I think the idea in Japan for baseball is by the end of April, but I don't know if they've set a hard date yet. So, I mean, if there's behind closed doors exhibitions or something, that's very different than what's going on here or what's going on in Spain or Italy or the UK or what have you.
Right. And, yeah, I mean, I think the only country that I saw yesterday was Nicaragua, who had action going on. So that's pretty much trimmed the 12 countries from last week down to the one that we saw yesterday.
And the Olympics is probably the biggest question coming up, and it looks like it's all but going to be canceled. You're now getting countries saying that they cannot put teams together. And this is where it's a complicated situation, and people are going to stomp their feet and yell and not pay attention to the detail. Could you potentially actually have an athletic competition in Japan in August? Yeah, you could. Maybe. We don't know for sure, but maybe. I'd say there's a decent chance of that. The problem is all of the qualification processes, and we're not talking one sport. We're talking every sport. There are some countries and teams and individuals who have qualified for the Olympics and know that they would be participating, and there's plenty who haven't. And there's plenty who haven't had the opportunity to compete in their circuits, their seasons, what have you, and you're not going to be able to get teams qualified. And then also plenty of countries who their Olympic organizing committees might not be the most well-off financially. They're not going to have the money to put this together now. So it's not about the actual competition happening in August right now. It's about actually preparing teams to participate in that competition, because it doesn't just happen a week before like, oh yeah, you're going, you're not going. No, that's not how these things go. So I think a lot of people are going to jump to a conclusion about that, but this is a very complicated situation. It's not saying that you won't be able to have athletic competitions in August. We don't know that yet. Hope so. But it's saying that you can't do the whole, honestly, 4-year process and going into the last key 6 months of preparing for an Olympics with the individual countries putting their teams together and people qualifying to participate. You can't do that. So if you can't do that, how could you actually have an Olympics?
You're also looking at countries who, and once again, we talk about where the world is staggered in the pandemic, and countries are focused right now on making sure that everyone who needs to be treated can be treated. Athletics is so far off the flight plan right now that they're focused on the people inside the country, and so focus is on other things. And we saw what Canada right now is like, no, we're not sending athletes, and that's the first major country that has said something like that. And
Australia said it.
Okay. And,
Multiple, it's starting to happen now across the board. And honestly, John, I don't think it's so much the countries deciding to suspend it because of other things. It's literally logistics as much as anything. I mean, you've got risks, yes, but you can't train for the Olympics right now.
Nope.
You can't train, and you can't qualify, and you can't get ready. So how are you going to have it? It's not about the August date. It's about the right now. From an athletic, put the rest of it to the side for a second. From an athletic perspective, you cannot prepare for the Olympic Games right now, period. It's just impossible, whether it's a team sport, an individual sport, swimming, diving, fencing, track and field, whatever. You can't get ready for it. So you can't have it. The Canadian Olympic Committee has urged a postponement of the Olympics for a year and all the support needed to navigate what that would look like. I mean, ideally, that's what would happen, is you postpone for a year and you still have it in Japan, because it's not like they haven't invested a ton of money into having the Olympics. It's a big deal, and you don't want to see that wasted. So, like the Euros, like Copa America pushed back a year, that would seem to make the most sense and allow everything to get back on a normal time frame. Because, I mean, we've seen it in years where there were boycotts in the Olympics, where people missed out on the opportunity to represent their country in the Olympics. And you don't want to take that away from somebody, because in 4 years, who knows if they're going to be able to participate, whatever sport we're talking about. Postpone it a year. That would be the smart thing to do here. And then, yeah, the Olympics are going to have to figure out having a Winter Games less than 12 months after these reorganized Summer Games. But I'd like to think we can figure all that out as we go. It's better than just canceling it, which was on the cards at one point. And
the Japanese Prime Minister so far has, and word has come out from, I want to say, Reuters and other organizations, other news organizations, that there have been talks behind closed doors about alternate plans. Leading into this weekend, middle of last week, the Japanese Prime Minister is saying, nope, going to happen on schedule, happen the way that we have it planned because of all the investment.
Let's be clear. The Japanese Prime Minister doesn't organize the Olympic Games as a whole.
No, not at all.
He organizes what's going on in Japan. And in their world, yeah, they might be able to actually have the Olympics. The problem is all the logistics and the lead up. It's not about August right now. And this is stuff that it's not going to get covered in the right way, because everybody's freaking out about everything at the moment, which is completely understandable. But it's not about August. Like the Japanese Prime Minister saying that, yeah, he should say that. Like there's nothing wrong with him saying that, but he's not organizing how you qualify in track and field in the United States, let alone another country that doesn't have the infrastructure. He's not organizing, I think, diving, where they have a world diving tour and you qualify based off how you do, and you're not having events. The Japanese Prime Minister doesn't have anything to do with that. He doesn't work with CONCACAF to reorganize the men's Olympic qualifying tournament. Like, in his world, yeah, they might be able to do it. Doesn't mean you're going to be able to have teams that have qualified to be there. And that's the problem right now.
You have elected officials who are going to say whatever they are going to put out there publicly. Talking about
their aspect of it, it's not even
right.
I'm not throwing shade on the Japanese Prime Minister. That's not. He doesn't handle everything about the Olympics.
No.
Could they have a competition in August? Potentially. We don't know for sure. But you have to continue to plan for it, and he should want to have it, of course. Duh. Like, I think we're all understanding of that. But the big picture here, the big time logistics, it's not about being a politician. It's about you can't have an athletic competition like the Olympics without qualifying, without competitions in the build-up, without everything that can't take place right now. you can't do it. It's not about the actual competition. It is how you get there, and you can't do any of that right now. So you have to postpone for a year to be fair to the athletes who, as we know, from a soccer perspective, the Olympics are a little different. It's not the number one thing, whether it's the women or the men. It's not. But from a gymnast, from a sprinter, from a swimmer, it's everything. And you shouldn't take that away by canceling it, and you also shouldn't take that away by creating some ridiculous way to get people into it. It should be treated as it is for every 4-year cycle. You can't do that right now. You've got to postpone it a year, and have a big Olympics next year that are special, and they will be. And they'll be remembered in history for what it took to get there for many of these athletes.
And you're talking about how many different participating nations traditionally when it comes to a Summer Olympiad,
something like that.
Yeah. And so you're talking about taking each individual country and their individual processes for getting their athletes to represent their country in this competition.
And some aren't even about that. Some are just like participating in whatever the tour is. However you qualify, it's not even country by country. Some it's international competition gets you there, and you can't have anything right now.
Yeah, and then you have countries who have their own ways of doing things when it comes to athletes, and it's that country's one opportunity to send athletes into the Olympic theater and sit there and say, hey, you're representing your country. It's about the purity of that element, not necessarily about the international competition and saying that you've got a world-class person who does this particular sport and they can get a medal. It's about the actual competition and sending those athletes there and having them be as prepared as they possibly can as well.
So we will see where that goes. That's probably one of the biggest things in sports right now that we're waiting to see how it shakes out. On the soccer front, in recent news, La Liga has just suspended all competition, period. They have not set a date on when that could restart right now. So understandable with where the Spanish game is at the moment. They sent their official statement out that Spanish football competitions postponed until further notice, as agreed by the Federation and La Liga. So that is the Spanish update. The Daily Mail in England, and I was trying to pull it up. It doesn't want to cooperate. They have reported that potentially the Premier League could try to restart on June 1st and complete their competition. I don't know exactly what the ending timeline would be. If it's the end of July, which is what they have to do according to their TV contract as it currently stands. 9 games in 2 months. If they actually play the first date available in June, yeah, it could be done. That's taking any other competitions out of it. That's taking Cup, that's taking European competition, all out of it. Is that realistic? Well, the FA is going to have something to say about it. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. That's where we're all at with all of this stuff, to be perfectly honest. We don't know what's going to happen next. I would be skeptical because of having to deal with Europe and having to deal with the FA and the FA Cup, that would be completely and utterly feasible to fully complete the schedule. Actually, they're saying playoff matches in 6 weeks, according to the headline, which begin the 2021 season in mid-August. I mean, the financials are driving this, and that's where we're at here. Man, they have a lot of ads on the Daily Mail's website. I get it.
They do.
Wow. The Premier League is formulating a new contingency plan to finish the season, which reportedly involves fixtures resuming from June 1 and all matches being played within a time frame of just 6 weeks. This is from Jordan Seward. That would allow the 2021 campaign to begin on time, August 8th. It'd be 4 weeks after the end of the previous season.
I'm trying to think out loud how different that is from the festive fixtures period. And
well, it's over a longer period of time. It'd be that kind of compression over a longer period of time. I'm looking to see if they mention anything about FA. The Telegraph's, and this, I guess, it was originally reported by the Telegraph. Yeah. Reported that games would be played behind closed doors, while the Premier League would require the government to sanction the presence of emergency crews within the ground. So that would be starting behind closed doors on June 1st. They would intend for the FA Cup to be completed. That would satisfy broadcasting partners, BT Sports, Sky Sports, to get that done. Not sure about Europe and European competition, and I guess that's a whole different conversation. But, that also goes, dovetailing with a statement that came out of our friends at Aberdeen this morning, and how difficult the situation is for a club at that level. Pulling that up right now, Dave Cormack, an Atlanta resident, gave an update, and this gives you a snapshot of kind of where things stand with clubs at that level. He said, 3 weeks ago, we were in a healthy financial position, free of external debt, £1.5 million in the bank. We had expected income of about £1 million from our 4 home league games and the Scottish Cup semifinal, and potentially £5 million in season ticket sales, seasonal hospitality, and new shirt sales coming in through mid-July. Our monthly running costs are about £1.2 million, and it's only prudent to assume that realistically there will be no football until July, perhaps at the earliest. And this is in Scotland. During this period, we are therefore facing £5 million in outgoings with no expected income. No matches are planned, and we have no idea when a new season starts, never mind the current season ending, and it is highly unlikely there will be any player sales in the summer. The situation is currently unsustainable. It's clearly unsustainable. No club, whatever their size, scale, or level of investment, can withstand a total lack of income over a period of anything between 3 to 6 months. We are doing everything we can to mitigate this over the next few months and protect our hardworking, dedicated, and loyal workforce and all those who depend on the club. That's the financial realities. That's Aberdeen, who is not in debt, which is, it's not unique, but it's not the complete picture of every club at this level in the UK. If you want to get into the Championship, you want to get into League One, League Two, Scotland, there's a lot of clubs in debt to begin with. They're not. But their reserves would be gone. If they have no revenue coming in, their reserves would be gone in a little over a month. That's the thin line you're dealing with here. And to go from, expecting $6 million coming in, and then player sales on top of that, which shows you how important those are to a club the size of Aberdeen, you would have been okay to get into the next season. Now, it's going to be difficult. I don't know how you can keep everybody together and keep things going. And this is one club. This is not, all 50-plus clubs in the Scottish top couple divisions and the, 70-something below the Premier League in England?
71. Yep, 71.
It's rough. And this is the financial reality. So when you hear that about the Premier League and you're like, man, how in the world? That's crazy. How are you going to do it? Well, then you hear this from Dave Cormack in Aberdeen, and you start to understand why there would be a push for that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're stuck. I mean, for the Premier League, you've got the TV money coming in at least, and you've got the TV contracts. You don't want to give money back. So you're trying to deal with that side of it. Aberdeen, behind closed doors games, wouldn't do anything for them, really. I don't think the TV side is anything that's even really big and factoring in at the moment. So
No.
you're in a bad spot. Everybody's in a bad spot. And that's why you want to get games back underway as soon as possible. But then there's the reality. The reality is that it might not be safe to. And that's a scary place to be for a lot of soccer clubs, let alone businesses worldwide that are dealing with this.
The landscape's going to be different. I mean, bottom line. I mean, you're going to have, we've mentioned 71 teams below the Premier League, and their financials nowhere close to matching what's going on at the top flight. And so in Scotland and England, we're talking with the math, about 120 clubs, and the landscape is going to be different. Bottom line, what it looks like, don't know. But once again, in the top flights across Europe and around the world, you see where the TV contracts and all the economics are the drivers here in trying to get the matches back out there as reasonably quickly as possible. So, to see what Dave Carmack put out this morning, not a surprise, but the fact that, he's putting it out there, I give him full absolute credit for laying it out there for anybody who follows soccer any level. For someone to sit there and lay it all out, I think we're going to have more owners do that, but to see this, it puts a face to the reality that you're seeing. Yes, I know that a lot of folks follow their own clubs, regardless of level, but to have this out there lays it out there as best you can to explain what the deal is when it comes to owning sports franchises these days.
Well, owning teams at these levels, I mean, everybody's got different challenges in a team, whether it's, a behemoth like a Liverpool or a Manchester City or, an Aberdeen. Or a Hearts, who Stephen Naismith is taking a huge cut in his pay to try to keep people's jobs intact.
50%
at Hearts.
Yep.
Yeah, 50% pay cut to try to keep others in place at the club. It's going to happen more and more. The longer this goes, we're going to get into these situations, and I don't know. I think you're going to see, I hate to even think about it, but I think you're going to see some clubs not survive it.
Yep.
I think you had some clubs who were already borderline in trouble. We've talked about it for years on Soccer Over There, that you had some clubs that were just not running themselves very well. Aberdeen's a well-run club with no debt. We're talking about clubs that have not run well and have been very precarious in their financials in a good day, let alone a day like this. It's going to knock some clubs out. It's going to change the landscape. I don't think the leagues look the same worldwide next year. I think you're going to see maybe first divisions are able to survive it, but I think you're going to see some of the lower divisions in a lot of countries either have fewer teams or have teams that move up because they're able to survive to fill a spot, let alone, did they earn the promotion? Who knows how the promotion relegation is going to go? It might honestly be down to financials at this point, because it's going to be difficult for some teams the longer this goes. That's Aberdeen's type of numbers on a not frugal. They don't operate as a cash-strapped club.
Fiscally responsible?
Yeah, that's fair. They run in a smart way to try to avoid debt. And that's their numbers and how thin it is. You get a club who is chasing promotion and is willing to go into debt for it. How are they going to handle this? Those are the ones that scare me. And that's overseas. We're talking, in the United States, what things look like below MLS. MLS is built as a single entity to withstand stuff like this. One club is not going to fail at MLS, and the whole organization is not going to fail at MLS because they're a single entity. USL Championship, USL League One, NISA, which was just getting underway. Clubs below that. I think clubs at a micro local level are going to be okay. They're going to be able to figure this out. But Joe Johnstone asked the question yesterday about what clubs do here at this point. I think it's more important what the leagues do, because lower division clubs in the United States, the ones who do it right, focus on the local, focus on the hyper local, and building those connections. I mean, you're going to have to lean into that and do it even more in terms of every person who buys a ticket, who buys a T-shirt, who buys a scarf. You have to treat them like part of the club. It's going to have to be more personal, because you're going to need those people to survive this. But the bigger question's the leagues, because, I mean, the lower division clubs in the United States, your biggest costs are your staffing, especially your players, and your travel, flat out. I would love to see a way to decrease the travel. And I think it's been something that leagues always go through. You know, I watched it happen with the NPSL Southeast, where when we started that in 2008, we had 3 teams. It was Atlanta, it was Huntsville, Alabama, and it was Greenville, South Carolina. Those were the 3 clubs that jumped into it. Chattanooga came in the next year. The Greenville team went away. A second team in the Atlanta area popped up. They went away after a year. Birmingham came in. Another team in the Atlanta area replaced that one. The big question was when Jacksonville came in. And Jacksonville wanted to come into the league, and you take what was a drivable league. I think Knoxville had come in at that point as well. It was a drivable league, and costs were really low. I mean, we were running an NPSL team. Of course, we weren't getting paid because we were crazy and doing this because we're insane. But we were running an NPSL team on a budget of like $10,000 to $15,000. I mean, it was nothing. Luckily, we had some owners and investors who wanted to do this to provide an opportunity for the players involved, and it was a great thing to do, and I think it was very successful. You had players go from that team into the Silverbacks and get professional contracts out of it. But when Jacksonville wants to come in, that changes the conversation, because that takes your budget, which is almost nothing. I mean, you're paying for gas money essentially, and renting vans to get places. Then you're talking about hotel. Then you're adding that into it, and you have to weigh that cost. And the idea was always initially bring Jacksonville in and grow a division for them, so then they play their division, and they're not going to Knoxville, for example. You're not trying to adjust the schedule for Jacksonville to come up and play Atlanta and Knoxville in a trip, and then the other Atlanta team in Chattanooga in a trip, and stuff like that. That is where these leagues can really get out of whack. At that level, we're talking like driving. Now you take it to the next level of like a USL League One. And USL League One, the idea from day one, we've talked to them all along the process of creating this league, was to get a lot of teams and be very regional with it. And that's ultimately where they'll head. How quick can you get there after this type of hit? Because, long term, South Georgia Tormenta doesn't need to be playing in Tucson, Arizona. There's no benefit to that. I've never understood at the lower division level in the United States why there's always been this allure of a nationwide league. It is not necessary. Let me ask you this, John. Do fans in Statesboro get more excited about a game with Tucson or a game with Greenville?
The latter, multiple times over.
It makes no sense to even have to take on the hit of the cost of going to Tucson and then getting a return game it's a game. Big deal. You'd be better off to start slow, take longer to grow. And USL was in a position where they could invest and try to jumpstart this. I'm not criticizing USL League One and the way it was constructed. The idea was to jumpstart it. And you've started to see some of that in this region specifically, where you've had teams pop up that are back to that longer drive, but hotel. But you're talking about bigger budgets. That's not as big of a hit for a professional team with a budget of $1.5 million or so. as opposed to an NPSL team with a budget of $15K. You
Right.
know, like Statesboro going to stay overnight in Chattanooga, that's not crazy. Going to Greenville, that's not crazy. You can handle that. So, but going to Tucson, that's a different conversation. Going to Lansing last year, that's a whole different conversation. I'll be really curious to see how USL handles this, and I'm almost wondering if they use this as a way to try to jumpstart a little bit of a realignment between the championship and League One and get more regional. At the championship level, it's good that you don't have East-West crossing over. There's no need for that. Are there teams in the championship that should be in League One ultimately? I think there are. And does this situation push that forward faster? Yeah. I think it will. And I think you'll see a more regional League One coming out of it. But there's also, and we've talked about it, there's also the potential, if USL is strong enough to take advantage of this and try to bring teams in, they've got to be stable, they've got to be sustainable. You can't have another Lansing. But are there teams who could make that jump up into a new League One that is more regional as opposed to what it is now? Potentially. There could be. And we'll have to see how that shakes out. But that story is going to be an interesting one to follow over the next few months.
In League One currently, leading into the season that is upon us, whenever that does happen, you have 6 teams in the southeastern footprint. Greenville, Chattanooga, Fort Lauderdale, Orlando City B, Richmond, South Georgia Tormenta. You've got 2 in the Northeast, Revolution 2, Toronto FC 2. And then you have 3 basically in the Central Time Zone, Union Omaha, Ford Madison, North Texas, and then you have Tucson out west. So Tucson is the one that is, and continues to be the one that's furthest away from everybody else. And you look at this 12-team league and the number of teams that have come in this year, and to the point that you just said, you don't want another Lansing. And so I think that you're going to have a lot of deep thought when it comes to the USL Championship and League One. And I honestly do think, like you say, I think that there are some teams in the championship that would be better suited for League One and their growth and their sustainability, because you don't want to lose those markets because of what those teams mean to that footprint and to that history and to the growth of the game and to the development of the game going forward. So, I think a lot of leagues have worldwide have a lot of searching to do to figure out long-term sustainability and continuing to maintain their presence in the growth of the game in and of itself.
I mean, let's go back to how the USL kind of got started, the USISL days, and honestly, the NPSL has mimicked a lot of that with being hyper-local and creating essentially mini leagues under a big umbrella. So the NPSL and the USISL went through this too back in the day. I mean, we're talking before their merger with the A League, like early 90s, where you had teams come and go, and that was the bad part of it because it was so cheap to get in and so cheap to do it. But you'd have a Southeast region with, a couple teams in the Atlanta area, a team in Chattanooga, teams in Florida, and then they might play a slightly different schedule than the teams in the West, in California or in Texas, because of availability, because of weather, because of whatever. That's just what they all agreed to do. But then you'd have the champions all come together, and they'd have I think they called it the Sizzling Six, would be their championship, and it'd be essentially a host with 5 regional winners coming in. NPSL basically does that. Like the West Coast of the NPSL plays a much longer schedule. Teams in this region play for a couple of months, but they come together. Once your region decides its champion, they come together and they have a Final Four at the NPSL level. Some regions are split into multiple divisions. Could USL look at some of that, depending, because, the question is going to be not the second teams, not the MLS second teams, it's the independent teams. The question is going to be, does this maybe blur the lines between championship and League One? Does it blur the lines between what's second division and what's third? Honestly, I think there's been way too much emphasis put on second division and third division in the United States. What does it really matter? You're not getting promoted to MLS. You don't have that distinction. You don't have promotion between the two. So what does it matter? Like, to sit here and argue about, well, we want to be third division. Well, we want to be second. Like, be in the league that makes the most sense for you. And I think that's been lost in the shuffle far too often here. If you don't have the means, don't try to go be Division III pro. You know, if you have the means to be it's not exactly a thing. There's no fourth division currently, and that's something U.S. Soccer probably should work on. But if you are best served as a team that can play in the NPSL and do really well, do it. If you have more money coming in, if your business grows, like Chattanooga FC is a prime example. You know, they came into the NPSL as a well-supported club initially, but nobody saw them turning into what they've turned into. They grew into that, and they grew up a level, and we've talked about the challenges of going up a level. That remains to be seen if it's the right move, but they outgrew what they were doing. Detroit City, another example. You've seen clubs do that. You've also seen clubs that have just been very, very good at the level they've been at and haven't outgrown it and haven't overextended themselves. You've also seen clubs that have overextended themselves, and most of those clubs have gone away now. And that's the problem is now I think even clubs that did not overextend themselves could potentially be overextended because of the different landscape that we're going to see coming out of all this. So I hope this is something that leagues, and this is worldwide, this isn't just United States, but leagues, clubs, take a look in the mirror at who they are and what they are coming out of this and act accordingly. Because it's an opportunity to get out of the old kind of landscape of, well, we want to be in the second division. We don't want to be a third division. Our fans expect us to be a second division. Do they really care? Again, do they really want that game against a team from 10 hours away, or would they rather have more local games? I think they'd rather have more local games.
Yeah.
I think what we've seen the growth of this game, whether it's MLS or lower divisions, the growth of this game has been on away fans. You've seen a ton of, you saw it with Atlanta going to Nashville for the MLS opener. You've seen it with Portland and Seattle. You've seen it with the crosstown El Traficos, with the Hudson River Derbies. You know, you've seen it with Cincinnati and Columbus. You saw it in the USL with Louisville and Indy and all the different levels of that. That's where things grow. It doesn't grow off of a Charleston and St. Louis game. That doesn't do anything. It's just a game. Charleston and Charlotte, now that's a different conversation. Get more local. That's what I hope comes out of this. It will do the game good. Get more local. I mean, Germany, for example, their lower divisions, I think below the second division. I think the second division is nationwide, and we're talking about a much smaller country here. But their third divisions are regionalized. Why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we getting more regional rather than worrying about clout and level, which means nothing because you're not getting promoted? So just play in the league that makes the most sense for you. And that's what I hope happens out of all this, and we'll have to wait and see.
And that's, the prudence, I guess, is the word of the day for me, both financial and just using the common sense idea of, all right, what's the best way to build the sport? And for me, it's focusing on all the regionalization. And I mean, think about it, apply it to other sports. I mean, apply it to college football. When it comes to the Southeastern Conference, I mean, if you're Georgia, as a Georgia fan, what means more to you? Playing Auburn or playing the the game at the beginning of the year that's not an SEC game that, is strictly there for television, or like North Carolina or whatever. Just pick an opponent that's not an SEC.
Yeah, but now you're adding a bunch of layers to this. TV, first off. There's no TV in the second division of American soccer that's driving it. Georgia playing Oregon in a game is being driven by TV. And that's exciting for fans because it doesn't happen regularly. If you want to take that to college football, then you're taking it to conference play and adding a Missouri and adding a Texas A&M to the SEC that you did. But again, it's driven by TV, which is not a factor in lower division soccer at all.
Yeah, and so then I guess if you were to apply it to, let's say, the Southeastern Conference, the whole notion of playing Missouri, what means more to you, playing Auburn or playing Missouri?
Well,
I would hope it's playing Auburn.
But, again, it wasn't driven by playing Missouri. It was driven by Missouri's TV market that came into it. That has nothing to do with Tucson in League One. Like, it's a different world. And the non-conference game, I mean, go tell Georgia fans that the Notre Dame games didn't mean anything. You know what I mean? Like, that's a whole different conversation because of the power of TV money, which, the Premier League is dealing with that. Other leagues around the world are going to have to deal with that power of TV money and what drives it, because that's the number one revenue source. I would assume that in college football, TV money is the number one revenue source for these teams. Is it?
Yeah, I think so.
So they're going to tell them what to do.
Yeah.
If there's more TV money coming in than ticket money, you're listening to TV. And that's why you're creating mega conferences and you're getting the St. Louis market into the SEC footprint with Missouri. You're getting Texas in with Texas A&M. That's why you did that. Now, what'll be interesting next in terms of college football, and college football right now hasn't really been affected outside of spring practice. Will it have an effect on the upcoming seasons? Yeah, it will, because you're not getting that spring practice. You're not getting, for example, Georgia not getting their expected to be starting quarterback in for spring training. So he's going to come in without that next year and see how that goes. That's going to affect everybody. But it hasn't affected them from a business perspective yet in any reasonable way. I know SEC media days and things like that. Like there's things that have been affected, but it's not what college basketball is dealing with teams not getting a payout from participating in the NCAA tournament and affecting their overall athletic budgets. For a big football school that has a big TV contract with football, probably not going to be as huge of an effect. It hurts you, but it's doable. For a Creighton who doesn't have football, yeah, it's really big and it's going to affect it. We'll see. We'll see if there's enough to affect college sports alignments. Taking it back to soccer for a second, there is something that I'm assuming has been delayed. The vote on expanding the college soccer season to 2 semesters and not just cram 20-plus games into one semester, which is bad for training. It's bad for the competition. It just becomes a fitness test in a large portion of it. And you have games in the spring that mean nothing, and you have practices. Stretch it over 2, play the same number of games, play it over a longer period of time, play 1 game a week. Competition will be better. The development, the training will be better. All that'll work. That vote, I'm assuming, has been delayed because of all of this, and it would not take effect for next year at all, and it might not take effect for the following year. And that stinks, because I think that's a good approach to go forward. Would it potentially change, when the MLS draft happens or how the draft actually functions? Yeah, but that's not a huge effect. For the college game, it would make it a better product. And for players who go that route, it would give them a better opportunity to develop their soccer talents as opposed to playing 20 games in 8 weeks, 9 weeks.
which lends itself to Joe Johnstone's question for this morning. And he has reached out to us and asks, why does there seem to be such a large gap between MLS and the college game? Is the gap closer between academy teams of the same age group?
Well, it was part of a larger conversation, but the reason there's a gap there is training and training levels. College players are not being prepared to be professionals. They're not training like a 18-year-old would, or a 19-year-old, or especially a 20, 21-year-old would at a professional club. They're playing a whole bunch of games. And their job is not to develop their soccer talent. If you are, it's just like working, part-time trying to get better at something or being able to do it full-time. If you're going to, be able to invest the time in learning and improving your skills full-time, you're going to get better, faster. If you're doing it part-time while also going to class and being restricted in how much you can train and you're playing too many games in a short period of time, no. In general, does that mean that every college soccer player can't play professionally? No, that's not the case at all. But over the years, that gap has gotten bigger. There's been nothing done to improve the development of the college player. And on the pro side, look at the players you're getting into MLS at this point. Look at the players you're getting, not just from bringing in a Miguel Almiron and Ezequiel Barco, a Pity Martinez. Those players are better than players college soccer is producing, but also you're starting to develop players from within that are better than what college soccer is producing. So as a whole, there's a huge gap. There's a huge gap every level you go. And a lot of it is down to professional, top, first division teams. And not every one, because some aren't run well, and some don't have the right coaches in place, and some don't have the right plans in place. But in general, your first division top teams are going to provide a better environment for developing talent than a second division team, than a third division team, than a summer league team, than a college team. Because the best coaches, the best teachers, the best developers are going to move up the chain. So the teams at a lower division are going to struggle with that. There's always exceptions. There's always people who emerge at a smaller club and develop a ton of talent, but usually they get snatched up by a bigger club too. So the gaps are real. I mean, you see it. The whole idea, and I don't know why people who love the lower division game in the United States sell it short by saying things like this. This idea that, there's not that much of a difference between the USL Championship and MLS. It's proven. The Open Cup proves it every year. Do you get teams that make a run? Yeah, absolutely. But that's not what it's about. It's not about an individual team that makes a run. It's about the overall level. And you haven't seen a second division team win the Open Cup since 1999. You haven't seen a team in the second division win the FA Cup in I don't know how long. There's a reason for that. The better teams are at the top of the table. And in MLS, no, you don't have the promotion relegation element of it, but that doesn't change that fact. The better teams are at the top of the table. Just like if you had years and years of USL Championship versus USL League One competition in the Open Cup, not friendlies, competition, the USL Championship teams should be better. Is it by as large of a margin? No, because you're not dealing with as large of a budget disparity. MLS teams' budgets are very large compared to USL Championship. USL Championship teams' budgets are not as larger compared to USL League One. The margin's a little thinner there. So you'll see more League One teams pull upsets, but they're still a lower level. And that's why you see upsets from the amateurs, but that's why you see, in general, the USL Championship, the USL League One teams defeat the NPSL, the USL League Two teams, and the open amateur teams that qualify. Like, those results show you the gap. Is the gap as big every level you go up? No. But is it the largest between the first division and the second? Yep. And if you're talking college players, generally you're talking about players who are somewhere between the second and the fourth division level. Because you'll get some college players who step straight into a USL championship team and can play and can hang and do well, and you'll get others who can't. But you see very few step straight into an MLS team and hang and thrive. That gives you a sense of where these gaps are. A lot of it just comes down to money, and the cream rises to the top, not just in terms of the player, but in terms of the coach and the teachers who are developing these players. The best are at the highest levels, and that's the same in any country.
Going back quickly, 3 teams in the 1970s outside of the top division won the FA Cup. The last was West Ham in the 1979-80 year.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it is. You want to make an argument that Wigan made it as they were getting relegated and they won it? Okay, cool. And that is incredibly rare. It doesn't happen on a regular basis. Just like Leicester winning the Premier League. Great story. Didn't happen on a regular basis. So you can't let a great story distract you from the truth in this, in that the top teams are the top teams because they have the most money and they're able to hire the best talent, whether it's playing talent or coaching talent or front office talent. Doesn't mean that other clubs can't have runs, doesn't mean they can't emerge, doesn't mean new people don't come to the fore every single day, but generally they're going to move up the ladder. They're going to get hired by a bigger club. That's the life cycle of this.
And yeah, so I mean, it's great to see, from the sense of watching those kind of events happen in front of you. But those second division runs, those lower first division runs, they are few and far between, and it's because of what you were discussing. There's just the level of investment and the depth that these teams have that they can deal with in comparison to everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. But that's why you're talking about different levels of investment. And in the United States, the levels in terms of first, second, third are generally decided by who can invest the most. That's a level of security. That's a level of safety, because we've seen over the years, and whether you're talking the North American Soccer League and its first division in the 60s, 70s, and early 80s, where teams would come and go every year and teams had no foundation to fall back on. That's why you had MLS created the way it was. And it's worked. Were there bumps along the road? Yep. Are there still things that can get better? Yep. But how many teams in Major League Soccer's history have you seen disappear? 3. Tampa Bay Mutiny, which never had an owner. Miami Fusion, which had an owner who was in over his head. And Chivas USA, which was a bad experiment. That's it. You had years in the NASL that had 2-3 times that disappear or move or get sold in one off season, let alone over the whole run. And don't even get me started on the A-League and USL Championship and the leagues that were between the NASL folding in 1984 after the 84 season until the start of MLS in 96. I mean, it's a whole different world now, and there's more security. Is it different because of the lack of promotion relegation? Yeah, it is. But as just in flux as American soccer has been in its 50 plus years as a professional entity, a true professional entity, this has been the best way to stabilize it. If things had developed differently in 1966 when the leagues were coming together for the first time, and you didn't try to go from the top down and create teams at the top at the beginning with nothing underneath them to support them, well, maybe we'd be having a completely different conversation. But that wasn't the idea. And to even get into that, by the way, you had the American Soccer League that had been running since the 30s that showed no signs of growth. You also had a federation that was completely and utterly incompetent at this point as well. Well, that sounds familiar. You didn't have any way to grow the game. And it didn't grow organically. And people with money came in to try to blow it up and make it a big deal. And in a way they succeeded. Their clubs just didn't survive to see it. But as we've talked about here in Atlanta, you know, the seeds that those early Chiefs teams planted in the late 60s, because there was no soccer to speak of in Atlanta, all that led to what it is now. It took a long time to get there, but it did have an effect. But you've never seen the game grow in that organic way. The idea of promotion relegation in first, second, third, fourth divisions in other countries, it's developed over a century plus in these countries. The concept, the idea, and different countries do it different ways. It's not like they started their league yesterday and said, yeah, let's do it this way. Because honestly, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It's not a safe investment. The way that it's developed here is more from a business perspective, and it's led to more stability. Again, it hasn't been perfect, and people have had to learn, but you also were creating a new professional sport on that scale from scratch in modern times. I mean, how many huge American football leagues have started around the world in modern times? 0. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at NFL Europe and the World League of American Football, but those were both sanctioned elements
they're
from the
they're
NFL.
thriving, and they're massively successful today, aren't they?
Aren't they, though?
Yeah. MLS is growing. MLS is still doing what it's doing on a huger scale than it ever has. So, you know, you had the World League of American Football, you had the NFL Europe, which lasted a few years, and you had those things that went away. You've had, in this time frame, you've had the WNBA start and has been, you know, heavily subsidized by the NBA, less and less every year, but still it's gotten to where it is because of that support. What else? I mean, you haven't had... You can compare, okay, the J League. You can compare the A League in Australia. You can compare, and they're very early in the process, the new Indian Super League. There's no other sports. Like, if you want to compare the Chinese Basketball Association... I'm trying to come up with anything else. Like there's nothing else in modern times that has had the success that MLS has had.
Yeah. There's
nothing else to compare it to.
Mm-mm. I'm trying to run through the world in my brain and try to figure out, you know, leagues that could come anywhere close. And I'm coming up empty. I really honestly am when it comes to new things and levels of success. Yeah, I'm just, it's empty for me. I'll put it out there if anybody has any ideas, but I can't come up with any.
Yeah, I don't think there is. To go from 10 teams when it started to now looking at 30 in a couple of years, there's just no other comparison for that. Honestly, I mean, if you go even back through the growth of the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, you haven't seen anything like that. So what I hope is that now finally, because I mentioned it a minute ago about how the leagues at the very beginning went top down. I hope that now that it is somewhat top down, but you've been able along the way over a longer period of time than you would have liked, actually created a foundation below it, whether it's youth, whether it's, you know, second division and third division, now professional teams and summer league teams in the NPSL and UPSL and USL League 2 and all the local leagues. You have a foundation to grow from, which you didn't have in 1966, 1967. Now you have that. So you're able to see the growth that you have now because of all of that work that went in. And maybe there was money wasted, and maybe there were poor decisions made and bad strategies created at different points. But they all planted seeds along the way to a point now that MLS is growing, USL Championship's growing, League One is growing, and it's brand new. Everything is growing. Now, can it survive where we're at and how it's going to look after all of this? That's the question, and that's the hard part of this, is that this is going to have an effect. And while all of that is growing, not every team is on good footing, not every team is stable, and how is each individual team and the leagues that they're part of going to handle what things look like when we get back to action on the field?
And I think it goes back to the discussion we were having earlier about it when it comes to the independents and their localization and continued hyper-localization of their sponsors and their audience, and how they're trying to market themselves, and financial stability and all these different kinds of things. But for me, the focus is going to be on those independently owned franchises and where they see themselves in the landscape. Do you continue, if you're, as an example, do you continue to see yourself as a USL Championship team, or do you go down to League One? And, do you look at yourself in League One and think that something else might be an idea? And so that for me, that's where my monitoring is going to be, is along the USL level, with Championship and League One going forward, and NISA and all the other leagues that we see, and who ends up where. And I'm hoping that their idea of where they see themselves is the one that makes the most sense. And you're not trying to overextend yourself. You're not trying to sit there and say, well, we need to be here because of whatever reason, instead of just being commonsensical about it, saying we best serve our community and the sport and its growth in this particular slot, instead of overextending yourself and thinking that that's where you need to be when you can't afford it longer term.
We'll see. You're going to get a lot of things. We've talked about it with VAR, how it's exposed flaws in the laws of the game. Well, you're going to get a lot of things exposed. Clubs that maybe haven't been run all that well financially, clubs that have been hanging on, leagues that maybe haven't had the best strategy. You're going to see a lot of that get exposed in this time frame, and how they handle it's going to go a long way to the health of the game across this country, across every country, because every country's got its own things that are going to get exposed in all of this. And we'll see how it comes out the other side. And when that is, look, we don't know. I mean, nothing has really changed in that at this point. What I hope is that people out there listening have, done everything that they've been instructed to do, are taking good care of themselves, taking care of the people around them, just being smart right now. Because, you see pictures and you see videos, and you see people who maybe aren't being smart right now, and we'll see how long that sets this back. Because there was a great report yesterday that said if you could somehow make everybody freeze for 2 weeks and not interact with anybody, this virus would go away. 'Cause that's what it is. But that's also impossible, because that's not how anything happens. So it's rough, and we'll see where it goes. But it's going to have effects. And, we've spent longer on it this morning because probably we're all going crazy at this point. But those effects are going to be felt on the other side of this. There's bigger things in play right now. It's about staying safe. It's about taking care of people and, taking care of each other. But long term, this is going to change the sporting landscape for sure. It's going to change the soccer landscape in every country, even countries that the game is thriving and hugely successful and lots of money is being made. It's going to have an effect there. It's going to have an effect here. It's going to have an effect in countries that are still developing that. It's going to have an effect everywhere.
And we've got folks who have sent in questions this morning. Joe Johnston has another on the field question, and I have an off the field topic that we can get to after this particular question from Joe, if you'd like.
Okay.
Joe has a question. Your favorite pre-match warm-up song? For him as a keeper, it was Thunderstruck and Down with the Sickness. I know the first one. I don't know the second. I know that would shock you.
Yeah, seriously. You and music, man. In high school, my favorite one that I remembered when it hit had like a whole 9 Inch Nails. When I played later than that, and it wasn't like, music coming over a loudspeaker and whatever. It was like driving to the game, what I would listen to, depending on what I was playing. Like if I was playing goalkeeper, I'd want to listen to stuff loud and angry. If I was playing central midfield, you're having to drive around. I get it.
No, it's just how matter of fact you were in saying loud and angry. I mean, I understand the idea. Just loud and angry.
Yeah, I mean that's you had to psych yourself up because goalkeepers are crazy. So I'd have to listen to loud and angry stuff to get in that mindset. If I'm playing on in the midfield and I'm trying to set the tone and set the pace of the game, I'd listen to something with a groove to it. I'd listen to something that was not, loud and intense because I wanted to play, in a smooth way. So it just depends. My favorite pregame warm-up video, though, is by no question. It's Diego Maradona, the Live is Life video from the UEFA Cup. Before a game where he's just juggling and dancing around to the 80s song by a group called Opus, Live is Life. And it's the greatest video. So that's the greatest warm-up of all time. There's no question about it.
I think I've seen that video. I just didn't know what the song was by Opus. But yeah, that video of him warming up was pretty good.
I've retweeted that video at least 742 times.
Yes. And that was how I ended up seeing it. And
I would hope so.
Getting a big laugh about how he just absolutely just gets in tune with what's going on around him. We all have our ways. My question for you this morning goes back to a topic that we had last week. And in seeing Jonathan Tannenwald's timeline, it triggered it again. He just sent in yesterday his Soccer Hall of Fame ballot, and he had 10 names on it. And I wanted to know what your 10 would be in the current landscape, knowing that there is a backlog, and that's half the problem here, and sending in the folks that you would submit to the Hall of Fame.
Well, I got to see the ballot first off.
Okay, so then go look at the ballot, and I'll tell you what Jonathan put down for his ballot.
Okay.
His ballot: Shannon Box, Steve Cherundolo, Frankie Haydick, Lauren Holiday, Eddie Lewis, Kate Markgraf, Clint Mathis, Heather Mitz, Jaime Moreno, Hope Solo. And his explanation for Lewis, Mathis, Markgraf, and Moreno is that they're in their final year of eligibility, and he gave that extra weight. He says he had qualms about voting for Markgraf because of her current job, but he's been campaigning for her to get in for some time, so he decided to put her on the list.
Yeah, her current job shouldn't affect it at all. As a player, I think she should get in. Okay, and I can't think about it based off the stupidity of the format. You get to vote for 10, right, on the player list? You can only have 10 on your ballot?
Yeah, right.
Okay. So let's see if I can do this while we work through it. Jaime Moreno would be in. Frankie Haydick would be in. Steve Cherundolo would be in.
Yes.
Carlos Bocanegra would be in.
Okay.
That's 4. Lauren Cheney Holiday would be in. That's 5. I'm scrolling through it the first time to see who gets in as a first ballot in mine. Hope Solo would be 6. Okay, now we go back, and I got 4 more spots.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I will go with Markgraf, so that's 7. Berhalter is 8. Oh, I got 2 more. Steve Ralston is 9. And Pablo Mastroeni is 10.
Okay.
That's my 10.
Yeah. I mean, for me, the one that has stuck out for the longest time is Steve Cherundolo. And it's a question that I've asked on this show for years, is how is it that the mayor of Hanover hasn't gotten in so far?
I don't know. Didn't play in the United States. A lot of people just have forgotten about it, I guess.
And that, to me, was that has been one of the larger oversights over the last handful of years. Tannenwald said that he had no qualm about voting for Solo because the Hall of Fame doesn't have a morals clause. Talent and achievements cannot be questioned.
And I'm not. I don't think she's done anything from a moral perspective that would take her out of a Hall of Fame. So, no. I mean, is she maybe the most likable? No, she's not. She never was as a player, and she didn't really care. She's the greatest goalkeeper of all time in the women's game, flat out. So she should be in, no question.
And folks were bringing in Clint Mathis as a thought here.
Too many injuries, I think, to get in right now. I mean, in terms of, I get 10 picks, and that's the list, and I'm not necessarily looking at it in terms of, they're about to come off the list, so I need to pick them now. I'm just looking at the 10 picks on the list that's current. There's better options. Mathis had a number of injuries that affected his overall output. And it's an absolute shame because he's one of the most talented players this country's ever had. But when you compare production, there's others who had more.
Yeah, for me, and I was looking at it, and for me, I had Cherundolo, I had Bocanegra, I had Solo, I had Markgraf, Jaime Moreno was there, Haydick was there. So for me, since I'm still learning, what was it about Ralston and Mastroeni that put them in the list for you?
Length of career with both. Ralston was one of the best players to emerge from MLS. He was a rookie in '96. Didn't get a ton of internationals. Probably should have had more. Should have been part of the 2006 World Cup team, but got injured. Awful timing. He was critical during qualifying for the 2006 World Cup. Won a couple of Gold Cups, but 14 seasons in MLS, 6 in Tampa, 8 with New England. He was best 11 3 times. He was the all-time assist leader in MLS when he retired. That's what gets him in.
Okay.
Mastroeni, so, a World Cup appearance. I was trying to pull up the rest of his bio. World Cup appearances, he had 2 in 02 and 06, and he ended up being pretty important in 06. 3 of the 5 games as he got to the quarterfinals. You had injuries that opened the door up for him, but he took full advantage. In MLS, he got 1 best 11. He won an MLS title in 2010 with Colorado, over 300 games. One of the best holding midfielders in the league's history. So for me, Mastroeni had the longevity, had the achievements that get him in.
Okay. And there are a couple of other topics that came buzzing through my head this morning, and I think some of them will probably take a little research, so we'll save them for later in the week. I know that we were kind of talking about it earlier this morning, but there was something that Sky Sports ran on the weekend in their Sunday supplement, and they were asking, is this crisis a chance to reset? And that's the word that they used, the sport. And what they were getting into was ticket prices, taking care of the fan, those kinds of things when it came to resetting the sport, financial prudence, finding your place. Is this a chance to reset football, do you think?
It's going to get reset. It's not about a chance to reset. It's going to get reset. But you also have to look at that side of it as well. Like, it's easy to say ticket prices are too high. Okay. Now, as we went through the Aberdeen example, you're taking away 4, 5, maybe 6 games from clubs that need that revenue. Is that going to be a situation that presents itself to decrease ticket prices? I mean, let's be realistic. How can you do that right now? Like, how is that feasible? Like, you're going to have to then find a number because people potentially are going to have less money to spend. So you're going to have to figure something out. But can you just come out and say, if you're Aberdeen, I mean, how could you come out and just say, like, yeah, we're going to cut ticket prices right now? They need every dollar they can get.
Yeah, you have to look at your own bottom line.
It's easy to say those things, but you have to have a plan. There has to be a plan. And if you're going to be able to do that, how do you decrease expenses? And I don't know how you do that. You pay people less, whether it's players or staff. That's one way. In lower divisions, you decrease travel where it has a bigger chunk of your overall budget. Okay. That's about it. It sounds great. Like, oh, just reset everything. Yeah, it'll be fine. This will be fine. It's not realistic. And the game is going to get reset by things in this. Like, things are going to change. But just to say, like, ticket prices are too high, so now you can change that. Well, how? Like, you got clubs that are going to go out of business.
Yeah.
How are you able to just say, yeah, we'll take less money on tickets? You've got to find the number that gets you the maximum revenue, and can you get more people in the building by selling tickets for slightly less? Maybe. But, man, you're going to have to hit that number, right? You're going to have to do your math right. You're going to have to do your surveying right to find it. Because if you just decrease ticket prices and you have the same number of people coming in, and ticket revenue is a huge part of your overall revenue, and you basically make yourself bring in less money by not changing how many people are coming in, but bringing in less per ticket, how's that going to work? So it's not as simple as that. The bigger picture, and this is why I answered Joe's question the way I did yesterday about what lower division teams do, and I went to the league side of it. Those are the bigger things that are going to affect this. How national federations operate after this, how leagues operate after this, because that's what's going to affect expenses. That's what's going to affect the bottom line more than what individual clubs do. Individual clubs have to maximize revenue. They do. That's the only way they survive. That's the only way they can pay their people. So what do the leagues do to change it? Is there more attempt at the league level to go get sponsors and then spread that money around? Can the TV dollars go up? TV is going to be desperate for live programming. When that time comes, they are going to be desperate for it. Leagues that are coming up on renegotiation of TV rights are going to potentially be able to take advantage of that. So, I don't know. I don't think it's that simple. I think it's going to be reset in many ways because you are going to see clubs fail. You are going to see clubs go out of business. You are going to see the league structure for the current season, however it gets completed, you're going to see the next season look different potentially. You've already got a World Cup coming up in the winter in 22, which is bonkers, but that's going to continue. You're going to see things get reset anyway, but in terms of just, just cut ticket prices. Let's be real. How right now? How are clubs going to be able to manage that?
And also the advertisers and that part of it, I think, is also going to be something that you're going to have to look at, because yes, TV is going to want content, no doubt, and that's what drives their 24 hours worth of making sure that they've got all the programming that's out there. But and this was a conversation that we got into cross promoting on the college football show over at OSG yesterday, was attendance is down in college football on the whole, 2%, I think, year to year, and it's the fourth year in a row that they've had lower attendance. And you're looking at all of the stuff that's on television. After the crisis has passed, when it comes to advertisers and TV, how many advertisers are going to have that kind of income that they can invest and be a part of it? That for me is something to look at too. How many of the investors and how many of the advertisers who are currently in it have to revamp their plans when it comes to what they want to do and be a part of whatever sports product they're attached to? I mean, for me, that's something else that, you've got to look at when it comes to that TV product that's going to be out there, is that what's the advertising landscape going to look like, and who's going to want to step in or continue to invest at previous levels. For me, that's...
it's not going to affect every business in the same way. And as, we've talked about with whether it's, people who have the money and the means right now looking at the stock market, are there potentially good buys out there? Yeah, absolutely. If you've got the means to do it, you can take advantage of it. Are there businesses that have been run well, or businesses in certain sectors that aren't going to be hit by this? Yeah. And they're potentially going to be looking to invest in advertising. So I wouldn't say that every potential sponsor is going to be hit. Some clubs, some leagues, whatever, are going to have sponsors who are hit by it, and you're going to have to adapt. But that could be changing strategy as opposed to just you're not going to make the same money, period.
Right.
You might have to be a little more nimble in things. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's the word I was going to use. It's just nimble is what you're going to have to be when it comes to how you want to get your product out there.
Yeah. And we'll just have to see how that goes.
Oh, and yes, thank you, Joe, for sending the link to the Maradona workout video.
I would hope you've seen that multiple times.
I have. Yeah, I have. But no, it's always fun to see him in his zone, and yeah, that's always it's a fun watch. It is, just because you can see one of the best going at it, and he's just doing his thing, and he's locked in his own way. So no, I completely enjoy watching Maradona warming up.
It's the only warm up that is must watch, because it's just a freaking warm up. That's all it is. It's a warm up.
I know. But it's a great warm up to watch. I will grant you that one. That's very good. But no, I getting back to the conversation that we were having, I think that teams have to be more nimble. Advertisers have to be more nimble. Teams have to understand their price points. They can't just reset everything and say, yeah, we're going to have a 3 for $5 special. It's not like the drive-through window at insert fast food restaurant here. And you've got to figure out what works for you. And I think that the regionalization is a part of it, making sure that you can have these rivalries that we talked about in the first hour of the show, where it's you've got folks who are sitting there and, what are you more jacked up about? Well, I'm more jacked up about seeing the guy that's close to me to have those rivalries than I am the ones that are further away. And I know that we keep harping on Eastern teams in League One playing Tucson as an example, but I think that is probably one of the better examples that you can give. And I think that
and they've got a plan to avoid that eventually. I mean, that was just how they had to get started, but that is the example of something you don't want, and they understand that.
But no, I think that it's just understanding what you can do and not overextending yourself and thinking that you should be more of something than you are. And just being realistic about your expectations, being realistic about your timetables, being realistic about your growth and what you anticipate your growth curve being. I think all of this will help teams that want to follow along in that path instead of just sitting there thinking, yeah, let's go back to the way things were before, and seeing examples like we see overseas in England in the championship and things like that, where you have teams that are running up 8 and 9 figure debts just to try to get back to the Premier League so you can get that 9-figure payday. And then when it doesn't happen, you either become more desperate and try to spend more money and go further in debt trying to get back to where you were, and it continues not to work, and the cycle continues, and you end up doing something in killing off a product that didn't need to have that end result.
Hopefully, if there's a reset, it is to that mentality. And the FA and leagues and FAs across the world and leagues across the world can try to increase the sustainability of their clubs, because some are going to get hurt by this, and there's nothing you can do. They've already put themselves at risk, and this has exploited that. This has shown that risk that they took, and it's gonna knock some clubs out. It will. But hopefully, if there is a reset, that's the way it's a reset, is that you have a structure going forward that prevents that from happening. And clubs have to be smarter in the way that they run themselves and the way that they handle their finances, but also leagues and federations need to do what they can to prevent clubs from getting out of whack with that. We'll see. It's going to be tricky. Before we finish up on Twitter with any other questions, I wanted to remind you all of some of the different businesses that are out there that are friends of the SDH universe that are functioning right now, and functioning in different ways, but functioning nonetheless. The Butcher, the Baker in Marietta has their new schedule up on Instagram. It's TB Marietta. They've got their menu up for this week. They kind of changed their setup just a little bit. You can order on the website as well. They did pick up family meals that you can grab. Check them out, TB Marietta on Instagram for their schedule. Our friends over at Wild Heaven are doing their beer to go, and the Tremolo Nitro Cold Coffee, which I know a lot of people really liked when it came out to our kickoff party. That's available too. Avondale and West End locations, normal hours, 1 to 6 in Avondale, 12 to 8 in West End. The food option at the West End location, Comida Fina, which is really good. That's also on Grubhub now, by the way, but you can get food to go there. Second Self has got some pretty cool packages of their canned products. 10 to 7 is what they're open. You can give them a call. Check out all their social media channels. Second Self. I know they sponsor Terminus Legion, one of the Atlanta United supporters groups. You can place an order. You can say when you're coming. They'll have it ready for you. You can only get 1 case of beer per day. That is a legal limit. I don't know if you can go get a case at different places. I'm assuming that's not being checked at the moment, but who knows?
Yeah.
You can do that. A lot of restaurants are actually doing the beer or wine to go as well. That was actually a really smart thing that the Atlanta mayor, Keisha Lance Bottoms, did to allow restaurants to do that. Pizzeria Azuri, they've got a bunch of specials, and we retweet them all the time, and they're doing delivery as well. And the Suburban Ultras up there and coming are helping out as well with people who need it. So make sure you're following all of them on social media. East 48th Street Market is also open, and you can do all of the curbside service you need to. You call them, you make your order, you prepay with a credit card. The number 770-392-1499. Pull up to the curb, they'll bring it out to you. It is that simple. And they are absolutely vouched for by Nick Alifi and Mike Conti. So
yes,
that's a pretty good endorsement right there.
Yep.
Anybody else that you guys frequent, that you guys have went to here lately? I know El Tesoro and Edgewood is open and doing things in there. And as normal of a schedule as you can be right now. They're doing a lot of lunches. Mondays, typically, they are not open in normal times, so I don't think they're open today. But El Tesoro, with their all of their great Mexican food, highly recommended as well. So anybody else, tweet at us, send us a message on Instagram, let us know whether it's at Longshoe or at OSG Nelson, at Soccer Down Here. Give us a heads up so we can shout it out and let people know what's going on.
Yep. Chris Hutchison says in the rundown of the business is a case a day keeps the care away. Hashtag flatten the curve.
Well, I mean, it does. It keeps a lot of things away, like functioning normally. But anyway, maybe don't drink the whole case in a day. How about that?
Pacing, people. Pacing. And
water. Drink water in between the beers, please.
Hydration. Proper hydration. Little dihydrogen oxide never hurt anybody. Also, here in Office HD neck of the woods, the boss and I have been using Grubhub a lot. And what we're doing is we are helping out local businesses as best we can in ordering dinner on a daily basis through Grubhub. Grubhub has an option where you can tell the business how you want it delivered, where you want it dropped off. Do you want the driver to text when they're close, when they arrive, ring the doorbell, hey, we're here? Those kinds of notifications are up on Grubhub. And a lot of the local businesses in the Decatur area are tied into that. And so we're helping out in that way. And also what you can do is you can get and look on your favorite establishments' websites as well, getting gift cards and e-cards and things like that. And we're doing that as well. And what you're doing there is you get the e-card, you get the gift card, that money goes directly into the business. And that helps that business continue to sustain and pay the crews that they have. You can use the card whenever you want, but that restaurant or that business gets that money now, and that helps them out as well. So we're active in doing that currently as well when it comes to how we're getting our meals in and how we're helping sustain. Is the gift card and the e-card is something else that's popped up recently that we have that we've dove into to try to keep businesses up and running during this time.
Well, and you can get gift cards with the Brewhouse Cafe, who has had to shut down during this right now. They've been able to get creative and do some different things. They did a Brewhouse lemonade stand on Saturday. Don't think it was all lemonade, but it was all to go. And
a quote-unquote lemonade stand?
Yes, it was very creative. Also, High Country Rugby, who has frequented the brew house for years and years and years. They've set up a GoFundMe for the staff as well. The Brewhouse Cafe on Facebook is the best way to keep up with everything that they are doing. Gift cards, lemonade stands, GoFundMes as well. So check them out, and we'll be back at the brew house as soon as we can.
Yep. Rocket Pub over here on the east side as well. They have had to close their doors as of end of business today, but yesterday had a fundraiser. I believe it was a pulled pork fundraiser, and the proceeds, you could get X amount of pulled pork for $14, and those proceeds went to the staff and everything. Sold out in a few hours from their entire stash of pulled pork to benefit the staff there at Rocket Pub. So it was really cool for the community to step out for that as well. And yeah, let us know your favorite business, what they're doing, how they're doing it. Keep us posted at Soccer Down Here, at Longshoe, at OSG Nelson. We will retweet the daylights out of it and let everybody know what's going on. And also keep an eye on your favorite businesses on their Facebook page, on their Instagram page, because the information changes, and reaching out through social media is the best way to keep an eye on your favorite establishments and establishments around you as to what they're doing when it comes to service, when it comes to how they're having things delivered, those kinds of things. So keep an eye on that as well, and retweet the daylights out of it to us, and we'll do the same.
Programming coming up. No soccer over there today. It'll be tomorrow and probably be in the form of a watch-along. We're figuring out what that's going to look like. 6 o'clock tomorrow night is the idea for that. We'll have a normal show tomorrow morning. Thursday morning's show is not going to be a normal show. It will be a watch-along. And Thursday morning will be USA Canada 2012 Olympic semifinal on the women's side. One of the greatest games I've ever seen, period. And so far, I know that the Kelly Francis will be joining us for that one.
Nice.
So watch along Thursday morning at 9 o'clock. We're probably going to mix in some watch alongs in the morning shows as well. Keep everybody on their toes and keep us with something unique to talk about and something fun to do. So we will keep you posted about that. But tomorrow morning, normal show. Tomorrow evening, potentially watch along. Soccer over there. Might be a little bit of both. We'll see how that goes. Wednesday, normal show. Thursday morning, watch along. And we'll go from there.
Yep, and we also have some 1v1s coming up as well, catching up with Doug Irwin from the Greenville Triumph, Sean McDaniel, Chattanooga Red Wolves. And we've reached out to all the teams in the footprint. So over this next little while, we'll catch up with all the teams and find out, what's going on in their part of the world, how they're helping out communities, how they're continuing to keep an eye on things during the crisis. But, first two will be Greenville Triumph with Doug Irwin, Chattanooga Red Wolves with Sean McDaniel, and those will come out this week as well.
I think that's going to do it. Anything else on Twitter we need to hit?
GOWW17 after the triple header during the triple header last night said that y'all have probably already said it, but there's one silver lining to this mess we're in. That's X number of weeks extra. We don't have to play without the king. Get better at Joseph Martinez 17 # Atlanta United.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even just Joseph, because I think the Club America game showed it. It was the injuries on the back line that were more temporary, but those are the ones that affected that one. So you're not going to have those games without Miles Robinson, Franco Escobar, Lawrence Wyke. You're going to get guys back to full fitness at that level. And you hate to be without Joseph for any period of time, but if you have a back line like that one, you might be all right, and you might be able to find a way through it. So we'll see. I mean, that is one silver lining of all of this, is it will be a healthier team when they get back on the field. It's just when that happens, we don't know. And MLS is pretty much going on a week by week at the moment in terms of holding off training, a return to training for teams. There is a little bit of friction between the Players Association and I think the league in how that looks. And look, I don't know what the best way forward is right now. I don't know if they're better off to say, all right, we're not going to train for a month. If players want to go home or go wherever, they can, but can they actually do that? I don't know. I don't know if that's the best strategy or not. I think this is what I'm taking out of all of this, and I'm going to leave it at this. Nobody really knows what to do and what the next route is and how to handle this, and that's okay. I don't think anybody should be expected to have all the answers right now. What I hope is that people can recognize that, people can understand that, and people can stop fighting when nobody knows right now about what is the right thing to do. I think we have a lot of very smart people who know a lot more about the spread of diseases than I do, and most people do. And those are the people that I'm listening to. Those are the people that I'm looking for information from. That's who I'm paying attention to. Make sure you're paying attention to where sources are coming from, where information's coming from, and I really hope that people can get over their own biases, politics, all of it, and can actually focus on what's important right now. Because what's important is staying safe and staying healthy and preventing others from getting sick. That's what's important, not politics, not biases, not personal opinions right now, to be perfectly honest. So hopefully everybody can work together to do that, because that's what's needed more than ever before, probably in modern times, is people have to work together to get through this.
Yeah, no doubt. Seconded that opinion, sir. One other programming note. You're busy tonight, right?
Yeah, Monday, Wednesday, Friday this week, I'll be on from 7 to 11 with John Chuckery on 92.9 The Game. We'll definitely talk some soccer. He is Doc Sock, after all. We will probably talk some wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
We will probably talk some
Gronk.
music. Yeah, I talk some Gronk. I'm sure Raw will be on in the studio tonight, so there will be some discussion of that. Who knows what else? That's how the John Chuckery show goes. I'm just really, excited to hang out with Chuckery for 4 hours a night because it's fun, and really thankful to everybody over at 92.9 The Game for opening up a spot for me to hang out on the radio and talk to folks, and for John and Jarvis, the producer. Jarvis is awesome. Jarvis is one of the best producers in Atlanta radio, and for those guys to be willing to have me hang out with them 3 nights a week this week and going forward is pretty cool. So thanks everybody for making that happen, and we'll try to entertain y'all from 7 to 11 tonight.
All right, we are officially caught up on Twitter and on the notes of the day, so I think that's a show, sir.
Yep, I will go and study up on the Falcons, because, man, they've been busy lately, and get caught up on that ahead of tonight's show, because we'll definitely be talking about the Falcons on 92.9 The Game. We have to. It is the flagship of the Atlanta Falcons radio network, and that's been the number one thing to talk about in sports lately. It's been the NFL trade and free agency market. So we will get deep into that tonight, along with all kinds of other hijinks. I'll probably also pick another concert to watch today. I watched the Freddie Mercury tribute concert yesterday. That was really good. I had seen it forever ago. It was in 92, but I hadn't seen it in a long time and watched it in its entirety. So I will find another concert or music documentary to watch today, and that's the rest of my day. What about you?
Catching up on the other me's that working from Office HD will let me do. Like I said, we've got the two 1v1s that we're doing back to back this afternoon, when those will be out in Greenville and Chattanooga, and plotting some others, and all those other projects that, because you're out and about and working and being 9 other people, that you now get the chance to tackle from working from Office HD. That's the plan. Required reading for the day. Bill Plaschke caught up with Vin Scully for the LA Times. So LATimes.com, and going to the Dodgers section. So Plaschke caught up with Vin Scully. So that's your reading assignment for the day.
Yep, one of the all-time greats. That'll be very cool. I'll be checking that out. Make sure you tweet at us at Longshoot, OSG Nelson, at Soccer Down Here. Let us know about businesses that need a shout-out. We will do that. We're happy to do that. We want to spread the word about things that are going on in the community that maybe need a little bit of help right now. We will be glad to throw whatever weight we have behind it and spread the word. So let us know. Tweet at us. Send us messages. Give us heads up. And we'll be back in the morning. Mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha plata, y'all.